Welcome to Comics Now. This is Brian here, coming to talk to you a little bit about some of the books that I've been enjoying this week. I read a ton of comic books, probably way too many comic books, but when you're trying to run a site and a podcast about comics, you kind of have to know what's going on. Most of my favorite books, even after the time that I've been reading comics, most of my favorite books are still superhero things. That's why I got into comics. I actually was into superhero movies first, and kind of got into comics from there. And so I love these characters, Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, characters like that, and that's what got me into it. So most of the books you're going to hear me talk about are superhero books. I love that stuff. I like a lot of other comics too. I like comics that are more about people talking and dealing with relationships. I like fantasy comics like Isola over at Image, but superheroes are probably going to dominate this space most of the time for me because that's what I'm into. I'm just a big kid. And as you can see behind me, I'm really, really still just a big kid. So anyway, this week, books that I was really excited about, Justice League number 7, which I wrote about on comicsnow.com. This is the end of Scott Snyder's first arc on Justice League, and it was an excellent end to an excellent arc. Really excited about Snyder being on this book. He brings so much humor that I didn't expect to this title. There's a lot to laugh at, but it really fits in well with everything else that he's doing. The scope of the story is huge, very comic booky concepts, like a piece of the source wall breaking off and flying outside of time. Just really big, crazy stuff. So, great book. Number 7 was a great wrap-up to the arc, and it also sets the stage for lots of good storytelling to come. If you want to hear more of mine and Jay's thoughts on Justice League number 7, just check out the latest edition of the Comics Now podcast. I believe it was our 28th episode, and that went live yesterday, and we go into a whole lot more detail about what we think about that book. So, another book that had me really excited this week. I was very excited to read it, and this book, oddly, kind of went under my radar for a while, right about until the point that it came out, and that's Venom First Host. And if you guys follow us on Facebook or Twitter and you see posts that I put up with my collection, you know that I love Venom. I think I've mentioned this before on our podcast too. I've written about Venom before too, and I really did enjoy the Marvel Legacy first volume of the Venom book from Mike Costa and Mark Bagley. I thought that Venom really looked like I expected Venom to look. I thought the writing was really good. I thought that the dynamic between Eddie and the symbiote was actually really, really compelling. And this idea, and even though I've always loved Venom, I'm fairly new to comics in general, and even newer to reading Venom in the comics. So this idea that the Venom symbiote is conflicted about its nature, that it doesn't want to do bad, that it wants to be a force for good. I imagine that's not a brand new concept, since the idea of Venom as lethal protector is not a brand new concept. But to me, it was kind of a fresh thing, and I really enjoyed that in Costa and Bagley's run. And here we have Venom First Host, which is by Costa and Bagley. And it jumps off from the end of their run, where Eddie and his other have welcomed a new spawn into the world, a new little symbiote. And it jumps off from there, and there are some story elements that are tied in, but it's a much larger story than that, too. And it's cosmic. It involves the Kree and the Skrulls. It talks about the Kree-Skrull War. So if you're a fan of Venom, but also a fan of some of the wider Marvel Universe mythology, it's a really neat meeting of the two. And the first 2 issues are out now. Issue 2 actually came out this week. I think it's being published weekly. So it's a 5 or 6 issue mini, I believe. And I'm really enjoying it. The writing is good. The artwork is actually, at least on issue 2, it's the pencils are split with Bagley and Ron Lim, another very famous penciler. Most of you guys probably know that name. And the artwork is just stellar. And like I said, the story, the writing, it's all very good. So it's also really funny, and that segues into something else that I'm reading a lot lately. And again, if you guys follow us on Facebook or Twitter, you know this because I'm always posting pictures. I picked up the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1 fairly recently, the original Lee and Ditko stuff, and I've been reading a ton of this. It's somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 pages, and I think in the sixes somewhere right now, issue 20 something or other. Anyway, it's awesome. It's very good. I think it's a stronger start than a lot of other first appearance kind of things. I mean, if you read a lot of the early Detective Comics stories with Batman, you can see the potential, but you can also feel that potential is a great distance from being realized. Some of those are kind of a slog to get through, and Batman's my favorite, so I'm definitely putting in the effort. Also, Fantastic Four. The first couple issues of Fantastic Four. Really more than just the first couple. I mean, it's I think I'm through issue 12 maybe right now. And I'm actually waiting because I've got that omnibus coming later this month. But even those early issues of the Fantastic Four, it's another example of you can see the potential of this team. You can see the potential of the dynamic between the team members. It's fun, but again, the full power of that potential seems like it's kind of off in the distance. But here comes Spider-Man, and the Amazing Spider-Man stuff is good pretty much from the get-go. I mean, obviously, there were many years since then for Spider-Man to be expanded, but I would argue that based on what I've read, it's hard to do a whole lot better than Lee and Ditko. Maybe you can play in the same league, but Lee and Ditko with Spider-Man, they had something that was fantastic from the very beginning. The villains are certainly compelling and colorful and interesting, but it comes down to Peter and his struggles. A superhero fleeing from a dangerous villain like the Green Goblin because his aunt is in the hospital. Considering giving up on being Spider-Man because he doesn't know what it would do to his aunt if he got caught. This is really interesting stuff, and this is the kind of stuff that Peter Parker struggles with in those early days of Spider-Man, and it makes for really good storytelling. And then Ditko, it's easy to just glance at Ditko's work and aesthetically say, oh, well, modern artists are more visually consistent, or modern artists draw Spidey with better proportions, or the foreheads are tall, or something like that. And all that stuff is probably true to some degree. But Ditko's storytelling, his imagination, got to remember, all of these villains are brand spanking new at this point. Ditko's the first guy to draw Electro. He's the first guy to draw the Chameleon. First guy to draw the Green Goblin. He's the first one to do all this. He's making all this stuff up. The Lizard, Doc Ock. So it really is amazing when you consider it. And then just the visual storytelling. There's a lot of extended fight sequences in some of these early issues of Spider-Man, and they're so entertaining and so engaging because Ditko just draws them perfectly. It really is amazing. But anyway, the tie-in to Venom on that as well. It's very funny reading Costa and Bagley's run, and then reading even in First Host in the first two issues. In Costa and Bagley's run and in First Host, Liz Allen is the head of a company called Alchemax. Is it pharmaceutical? Somebody can let me know. Something scientific. I do believe they might be manufacturing pharmaceuticals, but at any rate, Liz Allen is the CEO of Alchemax. She's kind of this businesswoman who doesn't take any junk from Eddie, and she very much wants to be in control. It's funny reading that at the same time that I'm reading those original Amazing Spider-Man stories, where Liz is kind of just a caricature of what you would expect a woman or a girl to be. And in fairness to Lee and Ditko, I encountered a lot of caricatures like that when I was in school, and there are people that are like that. And also, to be fair to Lee and Ditko, Flash Thompson is kind of a caricature of a jock bully as well. And even more than Flash, who has a bit more depth to him, the people that are Flash's yes men are very much stereotypical kind of students who just follow along with the loudmouth jerk. So anyway, it's funny. It's very amusing to see Liz in those two different contexts and two different modes while I'm reading. So anyway, that's really what I'm excited about reading this week. I've got some stuff coming that I'm excited about reading. As I mentioned, the Fantastic Four Omnibus Volume 1, Lee and Kirby. Very excited for that to come. Excited for it to be on my shelf, certainly, but really excited to plow through all of the issues in there. Fantastic Four #2 by Dan Slott and Sarah Pichelli. That comes out next week, I believe. I'm surprised I don't know that one for sure. Really excited about that as well. Can't wait to see the team actually back together for good and to see what Slott and Pichelli have in store. I bought recently, I've been meaning to buy it for a while, the Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino deluxe collection of their run on the Green Arrow. And once I finish the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus, and probably after I finish the Fantastic Four Omnibus, then I'll start reading that Green Arrow collection. And I still have to read through my deluxe Tom King, Gabriel Walta Vision collection, which has been sitting in my shelf for far too long. There's a lot of comics to read, guys, but it's fun. Hope you guys are getting to read a lot of comics too, and let us know in the comments. Hit us up on email, comicsnowcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter or Instagram @comicsnowcast. Facebook, just search for Comics Now. Let us know. Leave comments. Write us an email or a message on one of those platforms. Let us know what you guys are reading. Let us know if there's a book or books that you'd really like for us to talk about. Can't promise we will talk about them because there's a lot of comics and we only cover what we like and everybody's tastes are different. But yeah, drop us a line. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you and we would love to talk comics with you. Until next time, I'm Brian Warshaw.